Presence is everything. You know, how people look at you, how people see you, how you want people to see you. That's super important in life, because to be honest, that goes down to the most primitive thing about humans. We all just want to be seen. That's how you know that you're alive, is when people see you.
We back again.
You
Jumping right back into the 8 P's of male masculinity. We're talking about presence and temperament. Talking about temperament.
got a little heated.
It got a little heated. But temperament is a real thing. The next aspect of presence, right? Now it's like an acronym. TAP. Tap in. Tap into your presence. TAP. Temperament is the first one. Second one?
You want me to hop in, or am I just saying the word?
You hop in.
Yeah, so for the second one of presence is articulation.
It is.
And we had a really good conversation on articulation. I'm going to try to bring it back, bring it back a little bit. But so articulation for me, and I want to give people perspective. When I think about these 8 P's of male masculinity, I'm thinking about what I'm going to teach my sons, or what I'm going to talk about, what I'm going to talk to my sons about. So temperament is definitely on there. Articulation is very important, especially for me. And I'm going to steal your story, but growing up, a lot of my friends used to say, yo, he talked different. He talked white, and I know a lot of us as African Americans, male and female, sometimes have that happen to them a lot, and even though I knew how to code switch, I didn't always want to talk in a certain vernacular. So, I would just talk how I felt like talking, and they'd be like, yo, you different. And sometimes it set me apart, but sometimes it put me right where I needed to be. Because sidetrack, there's times where, I was in the hood and God said, nah, you go to school today. And to be honest, I attribute those times to saving my life, because who knows what could have happened if he didn't tell me to go to school that day. But anyway, hopping back into articulation, I think articulation is very, very, very important. And I'm going to weigh both sides, because in the last video, I kind of leaned heavy to one side, which was, we live in a nation, and my famous quote is, the language of America is money, right? We live in a nation that's very capitalistic. Have to speak their language, right? So while as African Americans we've come up with terms of endearment and language of endearment, we still need to be able to articulate ourselves when we get into certain rooms and around certain situations, so that we can get ahead. But on the other end as well, it's very important that, especially as African Americans, we're able to articulate ourselves in a way where we don't set ourselves apart in situations where we have to connect with people, that are like us.
You're telling the story now, man.
Right? So I think I cleaned up real nice, because last video, I was heavy on one side, but because it's very important for me. I think it's very important, because to be successful, like if you go to somebody's house, to be successful or to be likable in that house, you have to know their rules. You can't go in somebody's house with your shoes on and they don't want shoes on in the house. Or you can't come in somebody's house with your hat on and that's super disrespectful. Or in some cases, you can't go to somebody's house and shake their hand if they don't do that. So you have to know the customs in somebody's house to be successful in that house. As African Americans, we're in somebody else's house, and we need to know those customs. Not only that, we need to be successful at those customs to be successful in that house. And that's why articulation and articulating in we use this in the other video. The King's English, or in just English, period.
Yeah.
Standard English is very important. It's very important to me because you need to know how to talk to people universally.
Absolutely.
Right? Where and we used the example of Martin Luther King Jr.
We did.
Right? One of the most profound people that we know, right? How would it look if he articulated his speech in another way that only resonated with people like us? Like, would his message have been as powerful as it was if he articulated it just in a way to resonate with just us? But I don't think so. His speech was so powerful, it resonated with people that are of different, that it resonated with Black people, white people, Indian people, Asian people, and that's because of his articulation. You know, so it's very important that we articulate in a way that we're successful in the land that we're in. Now, if it was our country, if I'm saying, and we in charge, and we, you know, we said we circulated money within our community 30 times before leave, and yeah, speak how you want.
Yeah.
But we're in somebody else's house and they speak a certain way, and if we want to be successful, unless you're like an entertainer of some sort, but if you want to be successful in that house, then I think that articulating the way that they articulate is very important.
It's very interesting, you know, thinking about what works. You know, first and foremost, Kevin and I here, certainly we both agree that we have understanding between us. You know, he looks like me, I look like him in terms of the gradient of our skin color, you know, and we run into bros a lot of times where, you know, they're not going to talk like we talk. You know, certainly we want to make sure that we promote understanding and that not everybody has to show up the same way. Right? Would you agree, Kev, that we're not suggesting that everybody has to show up the same way? The reality of it is outcomes.
Right.
You know, what do we aim to accomplish? What do we want to achieve?
Right.
How do we want to show up? And we want to say, you know, we're not sitting up here saying rules to live by. You got to do this. You got to do this. We're presenting a framework of understanding where if you look at it this way, right? Articulation, if you look at it this way, you can consider moving in a way that you have the best outcomes for yourself. So when we talk about presence, listen, we're going to show up how we want to show up. Authenticity is important. Show up in a way that represents you to the best of your ability, for sure. But with that, understand that it matters to a lot of people what you show up with, right? What temperament we show up with to the game, to the meeting, in terms of our readiness,
right?
Or, you know, if we're slacking when it calls for being, you know, present and conscious and alert, then that's going to send a certain message. You know, articulation. If we show up, we talk about the King's English or some more properly formed way of speaking, where the sentences are complete and things like that. You know, I've had to deal with this growing up, or the experience I've had is one where people open their eyes and say, they know that I'm kind of not rolling in a certain way. You know what I mean? They know that I'm probably not a street dude, you know, just by how I speak. Now, it depends on if I'm showing up in a different way, if I switch to more of a street vernacular, which, you know, I'm capable of doing. But how I usually, what's authentic to me is speaking in a little more clear and specific way. And so that's going to be up to the person. It's a package deal, though. You know, because how we show up with temperament, how we speak, how we walk, how we act, all of it comes together to form what we understand as presence. You know, that presentation, that look.
Right.
You know, we talk about it, and there are many different elements to it. Not only temperament, not only how we speak, but, you know, what do you call it? I would call it style. and personality.
Mm-hmm.
These things are unique to everybody. Style and personality, because maybe your style is not going to be a presentation that is widely acceptable. But if you can sell it, that's what I say.
Right.
If you can sell it in a way that lands and leads to the best outcomes,
Right.
then it's something that works.
Right.
You know, I don't want to say, listen, you need to be in a black tee, you know, a basic black tee, and you know what I mean, dress down. Some people that's not what they're selling. That's not the way they're trying to move.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we got a lot of differentness going on these days.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and nobody's fitting in one box, so to speak. I contend that most people are doing the same things, but looking different, doing the same things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's a whole lot to be said about nothing, right? But temperament, articulation, and presentation, they all form this crucible that leads us into presence. And style and personality are another aspects of that.
Right.
In terms of presentation.
Yeah. Let's talk about presentation, because I think temperament and articulation kind of lend itself to presentation, but I think what we're trying to get to here is the physical look of how you're presenting. I think, oh man, we could actually bring it back up. How we segued before was Malcolm X, right? So Malcolm X was a perfect segue for presentation, because he started off as, like you said, what?
Detroit Red.
And Malcolm X, another man whose articulation, just to backtrack a little bit,
awesome.
I mean, on fire.
Awesome.
On fire as far as articulation, and not to beat a dead horse, but it was universal. You know, he used vernacular that was universal to everybody, so everybody could get what he was saying. And it's super important, especially if you want to be successful.
His outcomes.
His outcome was to be successful. His outcome was for a large amount of people to hear him and understand him, and not just his race. And he got that using the vernacular that he used. Yes. Right. But going back to presentation, it was very important, because Malcolm X started off as Detroit Red, and he dressed, you know, he's slick, nice, you know, slick out. Back, you know, real nice, whatever. And, you know, but he went through his transition, and when it was time for him to get a different outcome, right, he switched his presentation. So I think when we were speaking about it before, the conclusion that we came to, and not to jump to the conclusion, but the conclusion that we came to was presentation. Really, all of it, temperament, articulation, and presentation, is all about what outcome you're trying to get to, right? Presentation, it matters about where you're going at that time and how you want people to see you in that time. I think we spoke about, if I'm going to Walmart, I'm gonna put on my Puma sweats, my Nike shirt, and my New Balance sneakers, because I don't care, right? And you know we don't do that. You know, we gotta do Nike, or Puma. But if I'm going to Walmart, I don't care. But if I'm going now to a business meeting, I'm throwing on that 3-piece. You know what I'm saying? With the shoes. So you gotta know where you're going and how you want people to see you, right? As far as presentation goes. And I think that's a perfect way to put it, because now we're not saying that you have to be this or you have to be that. You can be this in certain situations, and you can be that in certain situations, so that you're not tied down to one thing. Like we said, I don't think Martin Luther King wore a suit to the to the supermarket. You know what I'm saying? He had on jeans and a t-shirt.
Absolutely.
You know, so I think with presentation, it's all about where you're going and how you want people to see you.
Absolutely, and that's a keen insight, because it ties right into what we call the range of a person's expression,
right? Which
the truth be told, is something that graduates from level to level. You know, my temperament, articulation, and presentation when I was 25 years old is not the same as it is today.
Right.
You know, and so these things happened over time. We need to determine, in the moment that we have, in the moment that we're given, and with the goals that we have at hand, what's the best measure and manner of our temperament, articulation, and presentation for now. Right. So again, we're tapping into something, but we're tapping into, like Kev taps into what that looks like for him today in the best way possible.
Yeah.
Right. Ray Black will tap into what that's going to look like for me in the best way possible today. But it didn't look like that, 25 years ago. We talked about Malcolm X. Before he became Malcolm X, he was Detroit Red. So that means he was a street dude. He was out there getting his hustle on, conking up his hair, and he I think he was a petty burglar or something like that. That landed him in legal trouble. But he went to jail. And he had that experience. And there's a lot of men who've had that same experience, and our transformation sometimes happen in those very troubled and difficult times. While he was in there, he read the dictionary. So his vocabulary expanded like crazy. So he went through a time where he changed to, and his temperament, his articulation, and his presence changed with it. And a lot of us are going to go through that. One of the concepts that we had in our lost recording was life happens. And life happens to the best of us in such a way that these elements will change with us over time. We don't know what happened. God forbid we have a stroke and part of our face slouches down to one side and we're not able to speak in the same way. But that's why we started off saying with, it's important how we say things, but it's also important what we say.
Right.
Because sometimes not everybody's going to have that same capacity to articulate in the same way. And we don't want to throw people out, but that's why we say we just need people to be conscious that it matters.
Yeah.
How much do we care? Do we give a damn?
Right.
That's what I think one of the inflection points. Do we give a damn? How much do we care about how we show up and what we show up with? We're telling a story about who we are when we show up well-groomed, well-dressed. What does that t-shirt say?
Let go and let God.
Can you let go and let God. There's a message. That's intentional.
Very.
That's intentional. So when we move in this element of presence, it's really something that we orchestrate. We are the architects of our own awareness of how people are aware of us in the world. We are the architects of our presence, right? We're the architects of our aura, right?
Yeah.
We're the architects of our sound.
Yeah.
Right? We're the architects of our look. And therefore, we can be the architects of our lives.
Right. And I think that's where all of this is going. The 8 P's of male masculinity, I think it's so that we can have better control over our lives. And I think when teaching our kids, about purpose and passion and presence, and then we'll go into the others, on the next pod. But when teaching them about these things, you give them better control over their life, because if they're conscious of the fact that they need a purpose, that they have a purpose, one,
facts,
and that you can find it, two, that sets them on a trajectory. If they're conscious about the fact that they have passions, some may be good, some may be not so good, and you need to weigh them to know which ones to follow, right, which ones align with your actual purpose. Once they start being conscious of these things, they have better control over their life. And then presence is everything. How people look at you, how people see you, how you want people to see you. That's super important in life, because to be honest, that goes down to the most primitive thing about humans. We all just want to be seen. That's how you know that you're alive, is when people see you. How people see you is super important. Even if you act like if you act like it's not important to you, that's how you want people to see you. You want people to see you like you don't care about how people see you, but you still care about how people see you, and it's very important. And that's why presence is super important, because now we're giving our kids, or whoever you talk to, better control over how people see them and why people see them in a way. Because sometimes people act like, I don't know why people treat me like this. look at how you're presenting yourself or not presenting yourself, right? So going down, like, I'm super amped to talk to my sons about these, because it's like giving them the control that they need in this society, and hopefully making a better tomorrow, a better tomorrow for them, for their kids and their kids, because we gotta make it better. It's not horrible, but we gotta make it better.
That's the energy, man. That we gotta make it better, and we gotta start doing it at home.
Yeah.
That's the energy that we absolutely need. And someone once said the idea of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. And facts, listen, we all have done that. Everybody's played the fool, but we're putting a megaphone to the idea that we have power, and yeah, it's hard because it requires personal responsibility and personal accountability, and it's hard, but there's work that we need to do to have the outcomes that we want. I remember the guy who had one of the most popular podcasts on YouTube, who passed away, Kevin Samuels. He was a style consultant for many years, and whether you agree with his perspective and positions on relationships and the Black community, so to speak, and worldwide, before that he was a style consultant, and he employed men to show up and to represent themselves in the best form and fashion possible. And I have to concede that it's not an easy pill to swallow when we realize that we are responsible for the outcomes we get. It's something to be said that I can echo that part of his message as well as other parts, but particularly in this element of young people. We have to take, or we are responsible, or we can have power over and take control over how people perceive us when we show up on the block, when we show up wherever. And we can do it in a way where we change the environment that we're in. If you're out there on the streets and just going with the role of the street culture, that's going to be hard. Sometimes it's going to be needed to separate ourselves, and there are going to be some who will take up the challenge to separate yourselves, distinguish ourselves from the next person, and walk in that, because ultimately we have to answer to one person, and that's the man above. Okay, so we have it here: temperament, articulation, and presentation. The first layer of the 8 P's of male masculinity. There are 3 layers to this thing before we even get to providing and protecting. You're being sold a bill of goods that makes you a slave to present your resources and your energies for someone else's benefit, and that's not what we were designed for. We were designed, this first layer is all about, what are you willing to give yourself? Purpose, passion, and presence. These are things that we build and feed in so that we'll build up and we're ready to go out into the world. So, on that next, we're going to continue with the 8 P's till we get through all 8. On the next podcast, we'll deal with the second layer in the 8 P's of male masculinity, right? And those P's are proaction, provision, and protection.
Nice.
And any words on this first layer that you take us home with the first layer?
It's needed. A structured way to raise our young men is needed. And I'm not saying that this is the perfect, because it might be tweaked over the years. Somebody might take it and make it better. Somebody might take it, but whatever it is, whoever does it, there needs to be a way to raise our kids to be the best that they can be and stop letting culture take over. And this seems to be a good first step. I like it. I don't want to say this is it, because then people be like, whoa. I like it. If you take it and make it your own, cool, but there needs to be a structured way to raise our kids, and we need to stop letting, and I'm saying we, I'm not putting anybody down. I'm saying we need to stop letting culture raise our kids.
We'll be back. This is Ray Black of TRU-Man Podcast with Kevin Waring talking about the 8 P's of male masculinity. And we'll close out with this. I think we got a moment. There is an element, there is a complement to male masculinity, right? And yes, when we're done with this, we'd love to see a female complement to the 8 P's of male masculinity. That would be dope.
Yeah.
We've done it. We're off the ground and running. We look forward to y'all coming back to come and share with us when we present the second layer of the 8 P's of male masculinity. And we talk about proaction, provision, and protection. But before we got there, we say again that we had to walk through purpose, passion, and presence. This has been Ray Black, your life coach of encouragement with TRU-Man Podcast, where we reflect on the work and the worth of a man, and we focus on gold paradigms and diamond principles. Thank you, Kevin, for joining me on this TRU-Man's podcast.
Thank you. You already know.
You know what I'm saying? I think we did it. We're coming back for layer 2.
Yep.
We hope you'll come back and join us. We out.